Evening falls softly over the city. Windows glow, warm against the deepening shadow of the streets. Inside one apartment, the hum of life continues, quiet but alive. Footsteps echo lightly on hardwood floors. A muted laugh drifts down a hallway. The clink of dishes. The soft rustle of paper from a school bag left carelessly in the corner. Children move through the rooms in practiced routines. One opens a door. Another closes it again almost imperceptibly. Voices rise and fall, soft and ordinary, not demanding, not urgent. A lamp flickers gently. A clock ticks. The space holds itself together in familiar patterns, each sound marking the rhythm of home. There is a sense of order, carefully maintained. A quiet strength that holds 5 small lives in orbit around a center no one notices until it falters. And yet, beneath the calm, there is a pause in the air. Not sudden. Not loud. Just a subtle, almost invisible weight. A shift that something is coming even if no one yet understands it. The apartment exhales. The sounds soften. Time seems to stretch. It is ordinary. And yet, it is fragile. For in these quiet moments, life can change without warning. Not through sound or movement or any visible sign, but through the sudden absence of what holds everything together. By the end of this evening, the world inside this apartment will be altered. Not by what is added but by what will be gone. A presence, a protector, a steady hand, will no longer be there. How does a life built around protecting others suddenly disappear? Shaniya Thompson was 29 years old, but she carried with her a presence that felt older, tempered by experience, shaped by responsibility, and defined by a steady resolve. Friends described her energy as quiet but unwavering, a determination that allowed her to keep moving even when life demanded more than most could bear. She laughed easily, though often at small, private jokes. Her smile reached her eyes, the kind that invited trust and warmth. Yet beneath that approachable demeanor was a woman who had learned early to navigate challenges with careful precision. Life had handed her responsibilities young, and she had shouldered them with resilience, not complaint. Shaniya was more than a name in a news headline. She was a sister, a friend, a mother, a neighbor who remembered birthdays, asked about days, and carried herself with a quiet dignity that left an impression on anyone who met her. In her presence, people felt seen, not for what she provided but for who she was. At the center of Shaniya's life were her 5 children, each one a unique world of needs, hopes, and routines. She moved through her days in a careful choreography, preparing meals, guiding homework, helping with clothes and shoes, listening, consoling, and correcting, all without pause. To outsiders, these may have seemed like ordinary acts of parenting. But they were the manifestation of a deep protective instinct. Shaniya carried not just the weight of schedules, but the responsibility of shaping young lives. Every decision, even the smallest, was informed by a desire to maintain stability. Friends and family often noted her tireless devotion. She was the one who made sure her children had what they needed when they needed it, who stayed up late sewing, reading, or calming fears, even when she was exhausted. She bore the invisible labor of motherhood with grace, silently absorbing stresses so the children might feel secure. Being the stable one was not a role she chose lightly. It was a mantle she took on naturally, fully aware that her strength formed the backbone of her family's world. Shaniya's days were structured but never easy. Financial pressures hovered persistently, the constant calculation of bills, groceries, and unforeseen expenses never far from her mind. Mornings began early with alarms, lunches, and school routines. Evenings were a flurry of chores, homework guidance, and bedtime stories. Yet within the strain there were moments of joy. Laughter at a shared joke. A quiet hug when the day's chaos settled. A small celebration when something went right. These glimpses of happiness were fleeting, precious, and cherished. Still, there was always an undercurrent of fragility. The system she built, the routines she relied on, could not shield her entirely from the unpredictability of life. The apartment she maintained so carefully, the schedules she enforced, and the smiles she offered were all part of a delicate balance, one that required constant vigilance. Foreshadowing is subtle, almost invisible, the way a glance lingers longer on a child's absence, or how a sigh escapes unnoticed in the quiet moments before bedtime. The life she maintained was sturdy, but like any structure, it bore unseen pressure, bending quietly under the weight of constant responsibility. Shaniya Thompson's story did not begin in an apartment filled with the soft rhythm of a busy household. It began years earlier, in the places that shaped her understanding of responsibility, resilience, and care. Her childhood was a mixture of ordinary routines and early lessons in endurance. Friends and family recall a young girl who carried herself with a quiet awareness, who noticed the unspoken pressures around her and absorbed them almost instinctively. From an early age, Shaniya understood that life often demanded more than one person could give, and that sometimes you had to rise to meet it yourself. Parental influence played a defining role. Shaniya's parents instilled in her a sense of accountability and perseverance, teaching her to navigate challenges with resolve rather than complaint. She learned the delicate art of balance, how to offer kindness without compromise, how to shoulder responsibilities while remaining compassionate, and how to endure difficulties without asking for help unless absolutely necessary. Independence came early. While some children her age were free to explore and play without concern, Shaniya often found herself taking on tasks beyond her years. She learned to manage, to organize, to anticipate what needed to be done, skills that would later define the way she ran her household. The lessons of her youth left her both capable and cautious, aware that stability was not guaranteed, but effort could create a semblance of control. Family, for Shaniya, was both an anchor and a source of quiet complexity. She had a network of support, relatives who cared deeply and neighbors who admired her devotion. But even within these bonds there were challenges. Love and concern existed alongside distance, and moments of closeness were interspersed with unspoken struggles. Her relatives often expressed hopes for her happiness, for a life free from the pressures she carried. They saw her strength, her determination, and her unwavering commitment to those she loved. Yet they also recognized the weight she bore, the constant balancing act that left little room for pause or reflection. Emotional dynamics were subtle. Shaniya could be open and expressive with some family members while holding back with others. She learned early that sharing burdens was not always possible, and that self-reliance often had to coexist with connection. This tension, the desire for closeness alongside the necessity of endurance, shaped much of the woman she became. By understanding her roots, viewers begin to see why Shaniya became the steadfast, nurturing presence she was. Every choice, every routine, every small act of care was built upon years of lessons, love, and survival. Her family background explains not just her resilience, but the way she carried her world with quiet dignity. Wesley Bendick Cowboy was 33 years old, a man shaped by his own experiences, family, and environment. Those who knew him described a complex personality, a combination of charm and intensity, ambition and occasional volatility. His upbringing was marked by its own set of challenges. Family structure and influences left their imprint. Lessons about responsibility, resilience, and navigating difficult circumstances. Like many, he carried with him the expectations of those around him, balancing a desire to succeed with the pressures he inherited. People close to Wesley remember him as capable and attentive at times, yet prone to frustration when situations did not go according to plan. There were moments of warmth and connection, hints of humor, and flashes of empathy that those around him could see clearly. Others noted that he often preferred to manage struggles internally, holding back until tensions quietly accumulated. This was a man defined by contrast, capable of care and connection, yet carrying undercurrents of stress and unspoken strain that would quietly shape the household he later shared with Shaniya. When it came to the children, Wesley's involvement was visible and meaningful, though different from Shaniya's constant vigilance. He could be playful, protective, and engaged in moments of connection, helping with routines, attending school events, or offering guidance when present. Yet responsibility affected him differently. While Shaniya's life was structured around the children day and night, Wesley's attention ebbed and flowed, influenced by work, social demands, and his own emotional rhythms. Moments of joy and closeness were sometimes punctuated by conflict or distance, creating patterns that, while ordinary in many households, carried subtle consequences for family dynamics. Friends recall laughter and playfulness alongside moments of tension, as he navigated the challenges of parenthood on his own terms. The duality of connection and inconsistency was quietly embedded in the home, shaping experiences in ways both seen and unseen. Wesley's social circle and daily environment also influenced the household. Friends, colleagues, and acquaintances provided companionship, advice, and occasional support. Work brought stability, but also pressures that accumulated over time. Like many adults balancing responsibilities, he faced financial demands, shifting schedules, and the weight of expectations, both internal and external. Stressors built quietly, often unnoticed, punctuated by everyday challenges. The commute, the workload, disagreements over decisions, and the ongoing negotiation of responsibilities within a shared household. These small, incremental pressures did not define him, but they shaped the atmosphere around him. an undercurrent felt by those living closest to him. Shaniya and Wesley's paths crossed in a way that, at first glance, seemed ordinary yet significant. Friends recall the early spark, moments of laughter, shared interests, and conversations that lingered longer than most. Their connection was built on hope. Hope for companionship, for understanding, and for building something enduring together. It was a hope rooted in mutual admiration and the shared desire to create a family, a home where their children could grow with care and security. In those early days, the household was a space of possibilities. Plans were made, dreams exchanged, and the future seemed tangible, a series of what-ifs that could become what is. There was joy, there was laughter, and there was a sense of togetherness that promised stability. Parenthood, however, carries responsibilities that can strain even the strongest bonds. For Shaniya and Wesley, the challenge was not in affection or intention. Both cared deeply for their children, but in the way each navigated the constant pressures of raising 5 young lives. Financial strain was a persistent undercurrent. Decisions about bills, groceries, and household needs required careful negotiation, and the burden often fell unevenly. Communication, too, became increasingly complicated. Words were sometimes left unsaid, concerns deferred, and small disagreements magnified by exhaustion. Each parent had a different way of coping. Shaniya with her meticulous structure and constant vigilance, Wesley with bursts of engagement that fluctuated with his mood and obligations. The interplay of these differences created patterns familiar to many households. Love intertwined with friction, responsibility accompanied by tension, and devotion shadowed by fatigue. As weeks turned to months, the strain began to show. Arguments grew in frequency, sometimes over minor issues, sometimes over matters that had long simmered beneath the surface. Emotional fatigue settled quietly, leaving little energy for patience or understanding. The sense that something was slipping became noticeable. Subtle gestures, hurried words, moments of silence that lingered longer than usual. Yet from the outside, the household still appeared functional. Meals were prepared. Children attended school. Life moved forward in its ordinary rhythm. This was the twist. Despite visible signs of strain, the outward appearance suggested that things were manageable. Friends, neighbors, and acquaintances saw a household operating in routine, never suspecting the weight of tension pressing quietly behind closed doors. It is here, in this delicate balance between appearance and reality, that the story begins to shift toward the moments where ordinary pressures intersect with unforeseen consequences, a tension that will soon reach a breaking point. It was a day like so many others, filled with small routines that give shape to family life. The apartment, familiar, lived in, warm with the presence of children, carried the quiet hum of daily existence. Backpacks leaned against walls, shoes scattered near the doorway, homework and toys left mid-task. The kitchen smelled faintly of morning coffee and late breakfast. Sunlight filtered through blinds, falling on the worn floors and the little details that marked a home built around care, diligence, and love. In that space, life moved in its ordinary rhythm. Chores done, laughter shared, voices overlapping in a blend of normalcy and intimacy. Every corner of the apartment held memories, responsibilities, and the subtle energy of someone keeping the household steady. And yet, slowly, imperceptibly, the tone began to shift. The easy sounds of daily life, the laughter, the footsteps, the gentle hum of conversation, grew quieter. A stillness settled, first almost unnoticed, then more pronounced. Gestures became hesitant. Words less frequent. The rhythm of routine faltered, as if the apartment itself was holding its breath. There was no sudden alarm, no cinematic reveal, only the quiet awareness that something was different. A tension unspoken, yet felt, pressing on the edges of a space that had always been safe. The ordinary became fragile. A sense of foreboding wove itself into the familiar patterns of home. And then, in a way that no routine, no preparation, no vigilance could prevent, life shifted. The presence that had carried so much, responsibility, love, care, was gone from that space. The focus is not on mechanics or acts but on what that absence meant. 5 children suddenly faced a world altered in an instant. Voices, once steady and guiding, were silenced. The apartment, once a space of warmth and routine, was now marked by emptiness, echoing with the weight of what had been lost. Friends, neighbors, and family would later describe it with the same words, quietly repeated. What happened inside those walls changed 5 lives forever. It was a moment defined not by sound or sight or specific events, but by the absence that reshaped an entire family. A life devoted to others, steady, careful, protective, was no longer there to anchor them. The world of ordinary routines, small joys, and quiet struggles had been fractured, leaving space for grief, reflection, and the unfolding of events that would follow. In the hours that followed, the apartment, once filled with routines, laughter, and the quiet rhythm of daily life, became a place of absence. 5 children, so used to the steady presence of their mother, were suddenly removed from the home they knew. Confusion settled like a heavy fog. Questions hung in the air, unspoken and unanswered. Silence replaced noise. Toys lay where they had been left. Beds sat undisturbed. Footsteps no longer echoed down the familiar hallways. The ordinary textures of home, the backpacks, the dishes, the little reminders of care, became markers of what had changed, of a life that had vanished in an instant. For the children, every sound, every shadow, every familiar object carried a weight of uncertainty. And in that silence, the world that had always seemed stable now felt fragile, precarious, and incomplete. Family and close friends were struck by shock that seemed almost impossible to process. Disbelief ran deep. How could someone so devoted, so central to the lives around her, be gone so suddenly? Relatives struggled to explain what had happened. Words faltered, tears came unbidden, and quiet gestures became a substitute for what could not be said. Hugs held longer. Hands clasped tighter. Every moment was a search for comfort in the incomprehensible. Even as family members began to take steps to protect and support the children, the weight of the absence lingered. The routines that had once provided stability now carried the echo of what had been lost. In these first hours, the true scope of change was revealed not in headlines or reports, but in the faces, voices, and hearts of those left behind. In the hours and days that followed, law enforcement began piecing together the events leading to the disruption of one family's life. Investigators worked methodically, gathering statements, reviewing movements, and establishing the sequence of what had occurred. Each detail mattered: who was present, what routines were disrupted, what evidence could provide clarity. The process was careful, coordinated, and deliberate, a structured effort to distinguish what was known from what remained uncertain. For authorities, the goal was clear: understanding the situation fully, protecting those still vulnerable, and ensuring that every lead was pursued. As the investigation progressed, new information shifted the urgency. The individual involved had left the state, moving quickly across unfamiliar territory. Authorities learned that borders had been crossed, complicating efforts to locate those responsible. The usual rhythms of investigation, canvassing neighborhoods, checking records, following witness accounts, intensified as law enforcement coordinated across jurisdictions. Every new piece of information added to the pressure, highlighting how quickly ordinary routines can be disrupted, and how fragile the sense of stability had been. Eventually, law enforcement located and arrested the suspect. The actions taken were precise, calm, and factual. Legal procedures followed, custody established, and formal charges issued. The suspect was charged with second-degree murder, in accordance with the evidence collected and the law. Authorities emphasized due process, ensuring clarity and transparency while maintaining respect for all parties affected. The contrast was striking: a household once defined by shared responsibility and care, suddenly overshadowed by the urgent pursuit of someone who had fled. It was a reminder that even the most ordinary lives can intersect with extraordinary events, with consequences felt far beyond the walls of one home. In the wake of the tragedy, the community rallied quietly but profoundly. Neighbors, friends, and local organizations came together to offer support, holding vigils and moments of reflection to honor Shaniya and the family. Candles flickered in the evening breeze. Flowers were placed at familiar spots. Messages of hope and remembrance filled the air. Support took many forms: organizing meals for the children, checking in on extended family, and offering emotional presence to those navigating grief. The city, normally bustling and indifferent to individual households, became a space of collective care, a reminder that even amid loss, compassion endures. For the children, life had changed irrevocably, yet efforts were made to provide stability and security. Guardianship arrangements were carefully considered, aiming to preserve as much continuity and safety as possible. Extended family, close friends, and support networks stepped in, ensuring that the children would continue to grow in environments rooted in care and familiarity. The long-term emotional impact is difficult to quantify. Yet the dedication of those around them, guiding, listening, and simply being present, offered a path forward. It was a testament to the resilience that Shaniya had instilled in her family, a quiet inheritance of strength and endurance that would carry them into the future. Beyond the headlines, beyond the tragedy, Shaniya Thompson is remembered as more than a victim. She was a mother, a protector, and a presence that shaped the lives of those around her. Her influence extended beyond her immediate family. Friends recall her quiet generosity, neighbors remember her attention to detail, and children in her care carry memories of warmth, guidance, and love. In remembering Shaniya, the story emphasizes the person she was: steady, devoted, and unwavering, a life built around caring for others, now honored in memory and action. The story of Shaniya Thompson reminds us that even in the midst of ordinary life, people carry unseen weight. Responsibilities, stresses, and emotional burdens often go unspoken, held silently behind closed doors. The cost of unresolved tension is not always visible, but its impact can be profound. It touches children, family, and communities in ways that linger far beyond a single moment. Awareness, compassion, and support are essential. It is in reaching out, in listening, and in offering care that the fragility of ordinary life can be acknowledged and, in some measure, eased. Shaniya's life, her devotion, and her resilience leave a quiet but enduring legacy, a reminder of the importance of noticing, supporting, and valuing those around us. If this story moved you, consider sharing it. Leave a comment to honor Shaniya's memory. Subscribe for more respectful, in-depth documentaries.